Vážené dámy, vážení pánové, dobrý den. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the second day of the Digital Construction Conference, which is hosted by the Ministry of Industry and Trade. This conference is held in cooperation with the Czech Standardization Agency and the Expert Council for BIM, building SMART Czechia. This is part of the Czech presidency over the Council of the European Union. Please welcome also to this venue, Prague Congress Center. Development of this building started in 1975, and it was commissioned in 1981 as a Palace of Culture. The city of Prague took over the ownership of the building in 1992 and later renovated it to today's Congress Center. If I'm not mistaken, the capacity is over 9,000 people at a time. Last important changes happened in 2017, 5 years ago, when major building services were renovated, completely replaced, and the name of the building changed. My name is Martina Václavíka, and I'm honored to be here with you today. I've been participating in a working group under Ministry of the Industry and Trade, and we were working together with this working group. We worked on a project on adopting BIM in public sector. My role consisted of researching good practices to collect the right information not only during construction and renovations, but also and mainly to use this information and collect this information during operational phase of buildings. One of the key findings was the Digital Building Logbook. That actually led us to bring this topic to this conference today. Nowadays, it is obvious we have entered a digital transition. Each of us might have a different idea how the future built environment will look like. We heard many discussions yesterday, and I believe that today we will have also very interesting inputs from speakers, how they see and how they envision the future shaping of digital transformation. Now, please let me begin our first session, the initiative of the Digital Building Logbook. Please note that Slido will be still enabled, and you can use it for entering questions. These questions, please, you can also like, because the best questions we will address at the end during a panel session. You can also help us to write name of a speaker who should be answering your question. That would be helpful. I would like to share with you a few words on the Digital Building Logbook, the DBL, and I would like to start right away with the definition. DBL is a common repository for all relevant building data. It facilitates transparency, trust, informed decision-making, and information sharing within the construction sector among building owners and occupants, financial institutions, and public authorities. So how can we understand this? It is a storage of some data. It's a point of collecting information or interconnected points, because these information can be collected locally. It can be collected on European level or even globally. What data should be stored in the Digital Building Logbook? Of course, data about buildings. And these data, they must be relevant throughout the whole building life cycle, and it should be open to all stakeholders and all interested parties within construction sector. To my understanding, we cannot imagine the DBL neither as construction diary, nor as a tool to track building performance, such as energy or water consumption. Although some of this information will be stored in DBL. I'm not going to read more slides and definitions because that would not be fun for you. For that reason, we invited 6 speakers for our session, and please help me to welcome our first 2 guests, Ms. Ilektra Papadaki and Michael Flickenschild. Ilektra is a team leader within DG Grow of European Commission. And Michael is a senior consultant at Ecoris, also working for DG Grow. Thank you for joining me here.
Thank you very much for having us.
Ilektra, currently you lead the creation of the transition pathway for the European construction ecosystem, a roadmap of actions and commitments towards 2030. And I would like to ask you why Digital Building Logbook is here, and more about the programs that you lead, please.
Of course. Digitalization is a key pillar for the transition of the construction ecosystem for many reasons, because it represents the transformation in the industry, and this is key. We discussed a lot yesterday about how we need to accelerate innovation in the construction industry and the way to do this in a fair way. And on the other side, because it helps us achieve greater goals. And by greater goals, I mean environmental objectives. Digital building logbooks are under 2 very big Commission directions, both the European Green Deal and the Digital Decade. We are trying now with the transition pathway that will be a roadmap, as you said very nicely, for the sector by 2030, to find not only the points of transformation, but also propose ways for transforming and share the efforts between the European Commission and the institutions, member states, industrial stakeholders, academia, etc. So this is a bit the process of the policy making. I am here to show you a bit the process of the policy making, how we reached to this point, why we think digital building logbooks are important, how this idea started, how it connects with other initiatives that we have, and then I'm going to pass the floor to Michael that is going to present you deeper on the technical aspects of what we are doing now. So the discussions on digital building logbooks in the European level started in the far 2018, where we started seeing in 3-4 member states that there are initiatives of creating building logbooks, building passports, IDs. There are different names across the European member states in order to consolidate information about buildings. And back then, this was a lot about economic transactions. So it was about sharing better the information for a new developer, for a new property owner, but also sharing better the information for the construction professionals, that very often they are called to intervene in buildings without knowing what is in there, what interventions happened before. Of course, there is a lot of value of the information for public administrations, and there is a lot of information that the public administrations keep and maybe could be shared under the proper protocol. So we started mapping the situation, the condition, the state of play across the member states with a first study that took place 2019-2020. There the first task was to produce this definition that Martin described in the beginning, to define actually what is the logbook, because you will see now in the panel, and maybe you know already, that it's not so straightforward, because it's a lot about information, it's about policy, it's about what every country and sometimes developer thinks that needs to be there. It's really, you need to set the direction before you start collecting information. So this study produced an EU common definition. On the same time, as European Commission, we participated also in international discussions about the definition of logbooks and passports. digital building passports. They're practically the same thing, although they're called differently. And we also got the first granular analysis on the situation across member states. This study also gave us some recommendations for the steps ahead and showed us the gaps. Here something interesting happened in between. In 2020, as you know, we had already we had the pandemic, we had different geopolitical events that started developing, and we also saw the climate crisis accelerating. So there we recognized the role of the logbook as a contributor to the green transition. So there we enlarged our vision and thought of how amazing it would be if you can make an environmental assessment, if you have the data of a building and you can feed it into tools that give you information about the environmental performance, the sustainability, how better it would be a renovation if you have all of this data. And there we have also the recognition of the role of logbooks in big European strategies like the Renovation Wave or the Circular Economy Action Plan. This stage now that we are at is a technical study, so it's a big effort to propose a common model to Europeans of how a European logbook could look like. It's a lot of work that you will hear now from Michael on semantics, on dictionaries, on ontologies. We are really digging deep there. But we also want, through this technical study, to propose guidelines to member states for implementation. In the end, we don't want to say to the countries, this is it and this is what you need to do, but we want to offer something that will make everybody better and will help every country to take whatever they have now in place a bit further. In parallel, there are, of course, Horizon Europe grants that are will conduct now demonstration actions, and we will see a bit more forward-looking applications there.
Thank you very much. I would have a question for you. Of course, audience, if they have questions, you can use Slido, and we will come back to this question later. We can assume that there will be a lot of information. What kind of information we can expect to be stored in there? Because, for example, from my favorite field of sustainability, we know that there is a framework for levels assessment, green building assessment, or there is also the action plan on circular economy. What do you think? What kind of information can be stored there in DBL?
Not only stored, but accessed from the DBL, I would say. I think it's interesting also to see how the concepts evolved from the first study to now. We really want to highlight that it's not only about a repository, but also a gateway to building-related data. And there, tools such as frameworks such as levels are very interesting because we think that the logbook can both feed data to perform these assessments and also store the scoring of EPCs or SRI or whatever levels produces as conclusion. So we are looking into interconnection with all of these European tools. At the same time, we are looking into what is going on in national databases that are very diverse. Because you asked me also what type of data. It's also a political decision, no? But there is, of course, a base. There are some data that are very important for the building. We can imagine the blueprints, we can imagine. But there are also bills, there are also data that are linked with municipality, what they can offer, etc.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And since we know why the DBL is here, we also need to know how and what is happening. And for this reason, we invited Michael to present his slides. Just before that, Michael's role is to coordinate high-level construction forum for DG Grow and is involved in the technical study for the development of Digital Building Logbooks framework, where he leads the stakeholder consultation work package and coordinates the study. Michael, please.
Thank you very much, Martin, for this kind introduction, and thank you very much to our host, the Czech presidency, for inviting us to your beautiful city. Following now Ilektra's overview on where we stand with this development, I will dive a little bit deeper into our study, what we're actually trying to achieve, what we have already done, and what the next steps are, how you can contribute, and how we would like to see this, the outputs of the studies used in the future. I have a few slides prepared. I will try not to delve too much into each of this because there's a lot of information there, but I'm happy also to share later more information in the discussion if there's any questions. Now, I won't explain the definition again because I think Martin already explained it very well, what the DBL is, what the Digital Building Logbook is. But maybe to stress one more point again is the time dimension as well. So we are talking not about like a snapshot of a building, we're talking about a logbook, a book that can be updated, that can be throughout the life cycle of a building, starting from the design phase, starting from information from, for example, a BIM model, or starting from the building permits, but then can be updated through the construction. We talk about the materials used, so we mentioned circular economy, very important aspect to know what kind of materials are used. And then also we're talking about the maintenance, the use phase. We can find information about energy performance, about maintenance planning, which will also improve not just the will also improve in terms of moving towards our energy targets, so knowing like where we stand at and helping us that. And so I think this life cycle aspect is very important to mention for this concept of digital building logbooks. For this slide, I will just mention a few things. I think it's also important to know that there's a lot of benefits towards moving towards digital building logbooks. These relate, for example, as I just mentioned, the data sharing along the value chain. So not just along the life cycle, but also throughout the value chain of construction, different members of construction value chain, construction products, construction manufacturers and contractors. It can help with building safety, it can help with the life of a building by ensuring that it's properly maintained, and it can also provide additional information that can lead to more business, new business models for companies working, for example, in renovation. It is, though, a very challenging concept to implement. It requires a lot of collaboration between stakeholders, between people working in the value chain, between people creating the data, accessing the data, or people that need to access the data. So the topic of costs is often a very important topic to consider when implementing, updating, or validating data. Other aspects that are barriers include data privacy, the unclear view sometimes on who's owning the data and who's access to data, and also very important to consider a little bit, and where we will delve also into the study a bit, are the benefits. So I just mentioned a few of these benefits, but often these are very unclear or not very tangible. So if you talk about meeting our climate and energy targets, this is not very clear benefit immediately, and also for some people the benefits are not really there where, like, for example, the data owner offers the same benefits as the someone who can have access to the data. So the benefits also not really equally distributed. So that's a lot of challenges to consider. And with our study, we try to explain these aspects a bit better and provide some guidelines. Maybe to highlight quickly also again, like the particular aim of the study. So maybe also to say what we're not doing. We're not developing a unique or a specific logbook for a specific building. Now we are developing a framework, a European model for digital building logbooks that can then be adopted by member states, but also by private actors across the EU to improve data sharing and support thereby the creation of a single European digital construction market. So our vision is the vision of a harmonized EU model for digital building logbook and a harmonized EU construction market. This framework can lead to improved efficiency, improved effectiveness in the market. It can harmonize the construction sector. I think we heard a lot about how fragmented the construction sector is. We have representatives here from the SME sector, and we see a lot of SMEs, of course, in the construction sector. And here we can improve data sharing across the value chain and by harmonize the sector. And it also helps to avoid reinventing the wheel all the time, because there's a lot of initiatives in member states run by member states, but also private initiatives, and providing this framework can help to guide these initiatives. And finally, having these formats, having these semantics clarified can ensure that we can use and combine different data sources regardless of the software used. So maybe quickly to explain a bit more what we're actually doing. So what we have already done is we have created an overview of existing databases across member states, including the Czech Republic. We looked at open, accessible sources that we could find online to identify existing data sets on different data types for related to building and construction. This is currently being finalized, but we're also still receiving feedback, and I also learned yesterday from our Czech host that they will still send us some more information on the Czech Republic, which I'm looking very much forward to receiving, to help us a little bit more to get a big picture. Building on that, and also starting with that, we're building an ontology, or also a semantic data model, which includes a dictionary and a data management plan on the data that we would see and would require in a digital building logbook. We also will look into aspects of interoperability between different data sets, and the function of the logbook as a gateway, because we see it not as a repository, a central repository, but as a gateway that links existing data sets by aligning the formats, the structures. Finally, the end goal will be guidelines on data sharing, intellectual property, licensing models, and guidelines towards member states on implementing logbooks at the member state level. And here we try to differentiate between different member states. This is also why we look at different member states in our assessment on where they are and what their different challenges are and how they differ. Now moving a little bit in my next few slides on where we are, what we've been doing already. As I said, we have started identifying data. We also looked into what are the most promising and maybe also easy accessible data for initial DBLs. So based on the survey we found that a lot of, especially administrative data, but also construction and energy data was mentioned as very relevant for the work and something that we should focus on. So we're talking about simple aspects such as building ID, addresses, but also information about hazardous materials used, and also information about the energy performance of buildings. In this work package one, we also looked at different data sets across different member states, and here's just a quick overview on what we found so far. We're still updating this, but you can see a few member states that have quite a broad set of databases already accessible, and that all the topographical data is the most common that we found. I will present a few findings also from Czechia, from the Czech Republic. As I said, it's still work in progress, but we looked at 61 different type of data sets. For the Czech Republic, we identified 26 so far, 10 of which we say have a high practical usability for DBL, so these are very relevant for future digital building logbook. And then we assess these 10 a bit further on the technical functionality, assessing like how open they are, how accessible they are, is the data downloadable. And here we found 2 data sets that are specifically of high technical functionality, and 8 other ones that have some barriers still and wouldn't be easy usable and would need to have some changes to be used in a national digital building logbook. Just to also highlight what these data sets are, I will not butcher now the Czech pronunciation. We're trying to pronounce the Czech names, but we found a very good database on topographical data as well as on building registrations, which is basically the same platform. It's a geo-based data set, and which was very open, viewable. It had query features, it was downloadable, and it was free, so that was very positive. We also found the data set on building permit, compliance data, and here we found a bit, well, the data wasn't open, it wasn't free, so this have we scored lower. And also to highlight, for example, we didn't find for the Czech Republic yet building energy performance data set. So maybe once we get more information from our colleagues here, then hopefully we can also see if this is already there, or if not, then of course this is a recommendation to work towards too. I will not delve too much into Estonia now, because I think Jan Saar made a very good presentation yesterday, but just to explain, we're also assessing 3 member states in more depth. We're assessing Estonia, France, and Italy. Estonia is a smaller member state, very advanced. France is a larger member state with a lot of different private initiatives, and Italy is a federalized country where a lot of local databases exist, and we're currently producing also an output that we can then share with you, with stakeholders in our community about these different countries. On what we're working towards too. We're working towards EU facilitation, and there we see from a survey that people favor in general a common data format of EU common data format for core data, and an EU ontology that member states then can use, but also extend and build on, and that should also be built on ISO standards and existing standards, but would also then depend on the decisiveness of member states to implement it. We also see. We also want to. I was also going to use a few minutes still to present a bit what the exact purpose is and what comes into the DBL framework. And the main purpose is of the making building data fair, and with fair we mean findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. For final accessible, there's already very good examples that data.europra.eu has a good overview of existing databases, information about these databases, and they're online, they're findable, they're accessible, and it follows an open source data management system, CCAN. Interoperability relates to agreed formats, and reusability to agreed semantics, and here we're also building the European interoperability framework to develop this further. Now, I will not dive into this into much detail because I'm not a technical expert, I'm more on the policy, the coordination side, but we made already some technological choices. We are looking at W3C linked data, which is a semantic web technology, looking at web data and linked data on the web, so it covers already the findable and accessible. And then we made also some other choices and still working on aspects like identification of data elements, specification of concepts, dictionary of terms, and the linking approach, so how to use all these different things, explaining to member states how can you then link different data sets based on these technological choices. Just a quick picture to highlight a little bit what we're getting at. So once we have this framework developed or draft developed, we will test it also with the data sets that we identified. So for example, we look at the member state level DBL portal, we see what should be the functional links to like individual data sets by data provider in this member states. And then we also look more importantly like how can we connect these data sets within the data sets at the member state level and from this data provider. And here the green aspect is where we want to go. We want to have these data sets that follow the DBL syntax and the DBL semantics so there can be a direct link. Otherwise we need translators, converters, which would be extra efforts, extra cost, which we would like to avoid. So that's why our ambition is to move to this green level and avoid having data that's not compatible. Now, rounding up my presentation, apologies for taking a little bit longer. Next steps, timeline, we would like to invite you all to join our community, to get in touch with us. We have started in June with the first workshop. We run a survey with a second workshop to present our initial findings. And we will, starting next year, we have another workshop diving a bit more on work package 2, which is the semantic framework, the DBL framework. And we will also have another survey, another workshop, and another survey. So still a lot of work to come, but in a very short time frame, because by September next year, we would like to present the final technical guidelines that member states can use to work towards the national digital building logbooks. Now, with that, I thank you everyone for your attention, and we can explain a bit more later in the panel discussion. A few links to join our DBL community. We would like that you sign up so we can inform you about the upcoming workshops and the survey. And I also put the links to the high-level construction forum there, as well as to a new website that we launched for the European Commission supporting the digitalization of construction SMEs, which offers trainings among others. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. And I totally, please. I totally understand that it can be a little bit longer, your presentation, because there is a lot of information during your technical study that you're coordinating. And you probably asked to participate all member states in this study. And I wonder if there are like common barriers or repeating barriers that you identified, or if they are just unique for every single member state.
Yeah, that's a good question, because what we see so far is there's a few common barriers. Some of these I mentioned already at the beginning of my presentation. So there's the aspect of cost, the aspect of data ownership, key issues also related to regulatory aspects, so privacy issues. Sometimes this relates to personal data, so who's the owner of a building, which is, especially for some member states, a bigger problem than for others because of the existing regulation. But then there's also very specific challenges. So I know, for example, for federalized countries, you looked at Italy as an example. Here there's a challenge that a lot of the data is not available at national level. We really didn't find that much data sets that were very usable, but we needed to go to the local, the regional level, where the data was available and often also not very well developed. So these countries will have to do an extra step where they will have to first develop at that level and then go to the next level. And some countries we see also just the issue of lack of capacity, lack of political will. I know there's some supporting action that the commissions can sometimes provide, but in general, of course, there needs to be a drive in the member state with someone having a vision to drive towards this and uniting the different actors, stakeholders in that member state to work towards our national DBL.
Interesting, thank you. And thank you for explaining what's happening on the European level. please keep your seats, and I would like to invite our next guest, because it is also necessary to understand that some similar activities might happen already in the member states, and maybe we will find out that there are something that they not discovered yet, and that's why we also want to cooperate a little bit more in future. And for this reason, we asked representatives of local ministries to find out if any national initiatives can be aligned with the Digital Building Logbook. Our invitation accepted Mr. Petr Klán from representing the Ministry of Regional Development, and Mr. Michal Med representing the Ministry of the Interior. Please join us on the stage. Petr, you work as a head of the Department for Digitization of Construction Management and Spatial Planning at the Ministry of Regional Development. Could you share with us your views on future built environment, how it will look, maybe how digital will form built environment in Czech Republic?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So, right now on the ministry, we are working on a few projects that will help to develop this agenda. In Czech, we have multiple strategies and action plans, actually. We are working together, like many ministries, and everyone is trying to do maybe the same thing, because we have strategy for the e-government, we have strategy for the built environment, we have strategy for the BIM, we have strategy for digitalization of building permit administration, and many more. But every strategy is dealing with the problem differently. They are using different tools, they are pointing at one point, the problem of the agenda. With that, we have the problem that every agenda, every strategy is using their own information system to store the data, to work with that. So we don't have one tool to work with the built environment, to store information about the buildings, to serve as main source for the information. So we have the cadastre, we have the register of territorial identification addresses and real estate. And we right now are building or developing the construction identification number system, which is part of the Building Act. That information, the last one I mentioned, is the most difficult to point, because if you know the architecture of the e-government in the Czech Republic, you know that we have the basic, or we have the registries, then we have the cadastre, and then you need to build something above. That's the last information system, but in some way it's more detailed and have more information than all of them together. And when we want to talk to each other, we have the problem that we don't have one single classification system that we will use. So every information system in the Czech Republic uses different information, different structure of that, and if you can think about it, we have like statistical data. We have in a Eurostat-based system, CZ. We have the cadastre classification system. Then we have classification that is developing right now on the Czech Agency for Standardization, the CCI, which is completely different, and it's not working together with that. But every one of them is very good. And when you put all that together, you know that we are part of the Central European family of countries which have the heritage of Austro-Hungarian style of administration. So we have a lot of documentation. Everything needs to be done properly, and sometimes it can make troubles to do that. So if you look at the situation in Czechia, It's like when children are working on building the sand castles on the beach. Everyone is fully busy doing their job, building information system, classification strategies, and so on. So you can call that we have a lot of problems, but mainly it's a lot of work. And we are not there. So when my colleagues, the speakers, told that the European Commission is working on DBL, we are saying, that's nice, but we are just working on multiple information systems that they are doing maybe in some way the same thing. And that's maybe an opportunity to deal with that we don't need to have so many information systems, so many classifications, and we can store the data and we can connect them together. That we are not like all the ministries working for themselves, but we are one member state that we can connect all the things. So we have a lot of opportunities. And what do we want? You know, that's the difference between the pictures. Everyone can build their small one castles on the beach. But on the end, the goal is that we will build one environment, one thing, simple. We only want to have the information about environment. That, you know, when you think about that, we need to know where are the information coming from. It's from the building permitting. We know that we have a lot of buildings already built, so we know that somehow we will migrate the data from the cadastre. We have right now 700 building authorities in Czechia, and they have 300 kilometers of analog digital documentation, which are stored in multiple storages, and no one knows what exactly are in the papers. So for the future, for using for the data, we need to work with all things we have right now. And it's very good that when we talk with other people, our colleagues from other member states, we are not alone, because everyone is working the same thing. We are not like starting like yesterday. We have several hundred years of history. We are working on the same thing. So I know that delegation from Finland told me that they already started making digital copies of all the documentation. I know that Eastern guys are working very good on e-government. And it's very good to know that the problems can be shared. We can or the solutions for the problems, and that we need to go further. And in Czech, we want digital building logbook, and we think that construction and building area will use one information system, which is right now built, and we think that we are able to put all the data you need in one place, in one single connected data. And for that, I think it will be very good that we will have simple universal classification system. It doesn't need to be that we will have one system in Europe that, you know, everyone has different history, everyone has different needs, but same language will help to share information and cooperate.
Thank you, Petr. If anyone from the speakers will have a question, you can also ask question to others. In my eyes, the digital transition can help us with all these opportunities, and I see the future that we can move from collecting information and from so-called e-government to using the information and be more knowledge-based, governing our countries and our processes. What are your thoughts about that? How these opportunities can improve the way we are dealing with the information, and we are in construction sector, of course?
Yeah, I think that we don't need to think about that we only use that in constructions agenda, because the data about the buildings, we can use it for many more things. Because when you think, we have very nice best practice from Denmark, that when the crisis of Russian war started, every member state was forced to deal with the energy crisis. And in Denmark, they have BBR registry for the buildings, and they have information which building use which kind of energy source, which is something like the DBL. And they were able, just by one click, one query in the data, find all the buildings, all the owners who need to be supported by one click. And I think that that's the answer. That's the usage of the data. It doesn't need to be that we will, for the next step, we will have information that we need to have longer and more difficult assessment for something. But we can use it for everyday tasks.
And one more question, if I may, that would be, how would you use all this information that we will try to gather from different fields? It can be from sustainability and green point, it can be from digital, it can be from many different areas. How would you use it for a capital improvement plan in the Czech Republic, for planning the future investment? Is there a way to prioritize, for example, on these data, or what would be the logic?
That's something that we are discussing, because I know that my colleagues from the Ministry of Industry are working on the system that will create projects that will come. Our ministry has information system for these kind of capital investment, the big projects, and I think that when we will have data in right way, the connected one, we are able to automate the assessment, which building, which projects need to be built first. Because right now we have just big database of projects which are described simply, but we are not able to create the assessment that will be really fast, automated, and that is transparent. So I think it will help us to develop faster on the rules, and not by some kind of, personal feeling about the projects.
I agree with the transparency and trust is very important point of this whole system. You also mentioned that it is not only about construction sector, and that means that we should be able to look in all laws and all codes, standards, and be able to use the information that are embedded in these legislation. It might be possible, and it might be very useful if we can keep all the legislation up to date and exercise applied ontologies, and use them in the future for this reason that we were talking about. And for this, I would like to hand a microphone to Michal, because he's the right person to explain us what ontologies are. And Michal, please, I would ask you for your slides.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm really glad that Petr was speaking before me, because I have a follow-up presentation. I believe that it's not a coincidence. So, can I see your hands who ever heard about ontologies? And who understands what it is? Okay, I see not many hands, and in the end it's not so difficult as it may sound, so I will try to tell you in this presentation how to use ontologies in aggregating of the data and aggregating of the knowledge for example, in the building domain. So let's start with the presentation. Yes, so on the whole conference we have heard quite a lot about some standards, some new frameworks which are going to come and we need to follow. The thing is that we actually have quite a lot of existing standards, a lot of regulations, a lot of national laws which concerns not only buildings but concerns the whole, all fields of our lives, including constructions. For example, do you remember INSPIRE, Infrastructure for Spatial Information in Europe? This is one of the huge projects of the European Commission from 2008, which leads to the standardization and integration of environmental data in Europe. Let's say what kind of data are not environmental. And all of those structures exist. Governments have spent a lot of time and money on implementing them. And right now we are saying, okay, we need something new. It's not really true. We can use everything we have, and we just need to aggregate it somehow. So the problem is not a lack of standardization or the lack of some legislation. The problem is that we have a lot of data sets, a lot of standards, which are quite difficult to integrate. And let's look at those pictures. What do you think those pictures have in common? Do you see a building? Do you see construction? The thing is that every one of those pictures can be seen or can be described as some kind of building or some kind of construction, but we have a lot of different contexts. From the you see the bridge in the lower left corner. Is the bridge a building? Is it a construction? It really depends on how you define it. You definitely can say on the first two pictures in the upper left corner that both of them are buildings or houses, but definitely they are really different types of houses. So we need to somehow distinguish between those definitions. We need to specify how is it done, in which context we can talk about the building. So this is the main thing. The main thing is the context. We need to assign a context to every word we are talking about. And this is really important because the laws are using some words, the standards are using some words, and the different standards may be using the same words in different contexts. So we need to describe in very detail what is the meaning of a specific word in a given context. And by the definition, we do not mean only some explanation in the human words, but we also mean what are the relations between the objects, what are their properties, if there exist some events, what is the life cycle of the object, in this example, building. And this is the ontology. So this is the easy definition of the ontology. You really do not need anything else to understand it. It's usually given in much more complex and abstract way that it actually is. So this is what we need to achieve somehow. And right now, I'm really glad that in the previous presentation you have said that we do not have problems, we have a lot of work. And the work is to describe all of the context, all of the legislation, all of the standards using the ontologies. Why is it good? What is it good for? How can we use it? So, in the beginning, I have said that the problem is not lack of standardization, that the problem is that the data are not easily aggregatable. So, on the left side, you can see two data sets containing buildings. Those buildings are in a different context. And we can aggregate those data sets. If we do not have some internal interconnection, we need to costly transform the data into some new data set, which will be the aggregation of those two already existing data sets. This is a lot of work, a lot of money, and in the end, it's not really useful because those data sets already existed. So we have created a new data set only to create aggregation of two existing new ones. If we use ontologies for that, we can describe data from both of the data sets in the very context and use the existing relations and existing tropes and properties between them to make those two data sets understand to each other without creating a new one, which is a really important thing. The description, the ontology itself, we will use two ontologies in this case. We will have, for example, one which is describing the spatial plan. In the spatial plan, we have some definition of the building, which is a special definition, some special type of building as it is defined in the building law. And then we can say that every building which is a building according to the spatial plan is also a building according to the building law. This is one of the easiest examples we can have, but in the end we can infer much more complex knowledge from the ontologies and from the data itself. We have created a tool, we call it assembly line, which is quite easy to create ontologies. Right now this is only one of the tools which is implemented in the line. Right now we are working on the new UI for the tool, so it will look much more easier for the creators. Actually, this tool for creation ontologies is used by various organizations in the Czech government and in the Czech public space. For example, Ministry of Regional Development, Institute for Development and Planning of Prague, Ministry of Interior of the Czech Republic, Czech Standardization Agency. And the thing is that if we have some major top-level ontology coming from the European Commission, we can use our ontologies and create relations to that one ontology. And this is basically, the work is done. But there is a lot of work, as Petr said. Okay, so that's all from me.
Okay, I would like to make a test. Who can imagine what ontology is now? I think we have more hands. Do you agree? I appreciate that you managed to explain this and that we have a lot of work, no doubt. We want the machines to do the work. How difficult is it to use those tools that you presented? Please.
Okay, Martin, you are expert in buildings. So if I ask you, I need some expertise to create the ontology. So if I ask you, can you create ontology of buildings for me?
I can think of some, yes.
Yeah. So this tool is made for experts in the specific domain to create ontologies without knowing they are doing such a thing. So this assembly line is focused on the experts which has the knowledge in that field without even knowing they are doing something so complex and difficult as the ontology. So basically the tool is meant as the users are creating some thesauri or some dictionaries, and all we need is to create a term, give it in the context. The context is usually given by the law or the standard or something like that, and write everything they know about the concept into the tool. And this is how slowly we are creating the ontology. So
perfect.
It's simple.
Perfect. Thank you very much. This leads us to another subtopic that we prepared for this session, and we were asking some representatives from standardization, whether it was here in Czech Republic or international. Our invitation accepted Ms. Yuliya RobertaGerasymchuk, who will join us to the stage. Please welcome her. And also, we were looking for some good examples from academia, and for that we invited Mr. Petr Konečný. Yuliya is a program manager at the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, and one of the programs is called SMART. And from here, I would like to ask Yuliya if she can start, or maybe we can start with the video. Up to you, Yuliya.
Yeah, just maybe a few words. Thanks a lot, first of all, for inviting us here. It's a pleasure to be here. I think the previous presentation was a very good introduction to my speech as well. Just without further ado, maybe we jump first into the video of what exactly we're doing, and then maybe my question here to the audience and also to the panel, if I may, like how ISO can help. That's the main question from us. And with that, we can show the video.
Come here, please.
The world is changing, and so are standards. Together with the IEC, we're enabling new ways of accessing and using standards. We call this transformative program SMART. It's about making standards that can be read and even understood by machines. SMART standards don't replace existing ways of accessing standards, they build upon them. We call these SMART levels, where the first represents a printed paper document that can only be understood by a human, while the highest level describes standards that can be both read and acted upon by a machine. Reducing human intervention and error, and handling updates to procedures or processes, ensuring that the right standards are being used. From factories that feed global supply chains to small and even micro businesses, users can find and apply the standards that they need for success. So what would it look like in real life? Imagine the case of someone responsible for maintaining a quality management system. The different parts of their organization can be connected and overseen through a single device. There are new requirements to follow for several of the standards used by the company. The quality manager will be able to review the differences and follow recommendations to ensure that operations remain compliant. The needed changes can be communicated to the parts of the business concerned, and the relevant updates can be selected, downloaded, and applied in much the same way that our computers can prompt us to update security features. It's just one of the ways in which the SMART program is going to transform the way that we use standards, making them truly integrated, more intuitive, and helping to make lives easier, safer, and better in a changing world.
So I hope that helped with the introduction a little bit. Maybe if we move into the slides, I will explain a little bit more in the details. So first of all, SMART, it stands for Standards, Machine Applicable, Readable, and Transferable. And secondly, it is the name of our program that we are doing in collaboration with IEC, International Electrotechnical Commission. So we call them our sistership organization. And so what is SMART? When you are going to receive the slides, that is the link to the video that you've just seen, so you can review it if needed. And basically, our program is intended to make a step from standard as a document towards standard as an actionable content. It can be a database, reference libraries, services, platforms, so that new SMART standards, they help facilitate knowledge-based economies and then continuous compliance, as we call it. So we've heard a lot, I think yesterday also from the previous panels, that using paper in manufacturing process is very tedious, and that is why with SMART we aim for integrating SMART standards into the full life cycle of a production of a product or a service for manufacturers. For regulators, we hope them to become new important stakeholder of the standardization ecosystem in terms of ensuring consistency between more market-driven standardization and policy regulations and guidances. For standard developers, we hope to provide specific tools and formats how to create smart standards in a more efficient way. And for end users, as you have seen in the video probably, to ensure continuous compliance, to adjust to their needs so that users can, either those are corporations or SMEs, they can extract easily requirements from the standard, they can manipulate them in the way that are needed. So where we stand with the program overall, we started the program last year, end of last year. So last year was mostly about establishing collaboration, about setting up priorities. We have multiple projects running within the program. I'm not going into details here today. So this year, we're more focused on receiving the users' input, and we're also focused on reviewing certain commercial scenarios of this ecosystem, a new standard ecosystem to move forward. And we're preparing for piloting, testing, and experimenting. So that is where we stand today. Next year, we mostly will focus on piloting and testing with the intention to roll out standardization technical implementation roadmap by end of 2024. So we have very sophisticated governance of our program. At international level, we have many groups participating. We need to ensure that all voices of our stakeholders are heard. There is certain inertia within this, but with this I want to conclude that we're very open to collaborations, now moving into the testing and experimenting phase. We want to hear from you, and we have identified 4 priority sectors, and construction being one of them. That is why it is very insightful and useful and interesting to be here today to hear from you. What are your challenges? What are your needs? And my question, again, remains the same in the context of what I've just talked about and shown. How can we help? So with this, we're looking forward to collaboration.
Thank you, Yuliya. I think this answers a question of who should be helping with ontologies, right? It should be the creators of standards and those people working mainly with the standards. If you would like to invite someone for a pilot project, who would it be? Like what kind of company or what kind of client, what kind of partner would you choose?
So in terms of moving into testing or piloting, we have currently established like key principles for piloting. We want to make sure that whatever we're testing is end-to-end, which means from the standard creation to content management to content utilization, so usage. So we want to have all stakeholders from standard creators to standard users, so precisely entities or companies and regulators in between and national standardization bodies in between. Second, with this approach, we want to open up to as many pilots as we can have at the same time, inviting for partnerships and collaborations all those interested stakeholders. And we are also open to partner with providers for the purposes of such a testing. Then currently we're developing what we call smart architecture, which is a short-term and long-term vision for how this smart ecosystem will function. So each of the pilots or tests need to be kind of contextualized within this smart architecture. And then finally, in terms of timing, we assume to have to draw the line by November next year, so end of next year, for already starting the scalability exercise, because we're looking at many industries at the same time. Needs vary from sector to sector. That is why that is important. And finally, all the outcomes of this testing needs to be testable, verifiable independently. That is what we're going to ensure. So with this, we're very open to all inputs, all ideas for collaboration with those principles in mind that I've just explained.
I think that is a great call here. Thank you very much once again. Just please remind the audience that the Slido is on. We can see already some questions, and after the last presentation, we will move on to these questions in the panel. Petře, you are an associate professor at the University of Vysoká škola Baňská Technical University Ostrava, and you are also a guarantor of master studying program BIM Engineering. We would like to see what's happening as a good practice in universities in terms of building information modeling and using information for the projects. If you could please share your experience with us.
Thank you, Martin, for introduction, and I'm honored to be here with you to share what is going on our university. That is located in eastern part of Czech Republic, basically on the borders with Poland and Slovakia, and with that heritage of the coal mines and the heavy industry, we are dealing with that since last 30 years of transformation. And currently in the region there is the SMART agenda, smart and green region. So we have the smart thing again, because we want to transform from the so-called steel heart of the country to more progressive region. And currently we were able to, leave the coal history behind us. However, it catched us off guard nowadays because we are facing the energy crisis. So we need to also, along with the green future, search for the sustainable future. And this is what we are dealing with. And with the SMART project, we want to bring new opportunities, new energy, attract experts in the field. And with that initiative that is backed up by the regional authorities, the university, and also the industry and the general public authorities, we have created a Refresh project, and it can be called as a sandbox or a living lab that is focused on the energy, which is a hot topic, and speaking about the transformation. I can say that I was happy that the past steel industry-related architecture is nowadays as a historical heritage site. So this is one of the things that I thought as a student that it would be great. And now, another passion was that we have the geothermal energy down in the coal mine shaft, and it would be good to, also use that as a sustainable source of energy, and we were not able to use that in past 30 years, so I hope that in the near future we will be able to tackle the problem. So one of the Refresh living labs is the energy things. Obviously, typical sustainable energy like the wind, steel, solar are also, and how to store the energy. These are the problems. Then the material environment and these issues. Yesterday we have seen great progress in the concreting industry, which was the 3D printing. That is basically what we need to tackle in the construction engineering, the automation of the process, because we are still really highly labor-intensive industry. And speaking about the materials, we are facing the challenges. This is new material, and I believe that in near 10, 15, 20 years, the new failure modes of newly invented materials will emerge. It's like if we invented welding of the steel, and it was brought into service in 40s during the Second World War, then the fatigue of the steel appeared. So we need to do the research also to mitigate the other unexpected problems in the new materials and new technologies. And another part is Industry 4.0 and automotive environment. Yesterday we have seen the robot here that can help to let's say survey the building and create, for example, cloud of the points in order to create the passport of the building, the 3D model. So this is one such example. And so we need to automate it, like 3D printers. We've seen the robot that can place the bricks, you know. And with that respect, we are facing a social impact on the society. You know, we have seen that in past 30 years, the transformation from heavy industry to the much more smaller enterprises with not that heavy, you know, brand on that. And a lot of people were left behind, and we need to cope with how they feel, how they can fit in the social net, you know. So this is the social lab. And with respect to the robotics, it's like when the factories for the making fabric were introduced, the laborers were angry, you know, they were rioting and destroying the machines. And I believe that similar things may be happening with the robots. You know, on one conference I've heard that they've invented or prepared a robot for the cleaning of the garages. And the staff, the cleaning service, the humans, you know, were not happy with the robot there, and they kind of interfere with the robot, you know, kicking it and things like that. So this is the social impact of the new technologies that we need to take into account. And besides of that, we are here on the digital construction. So it is not still fully adopted at our university, but it's in the plan that the new living lab or new sandbox would be related to real estate asset information management. So this is possible because we have rather unique campus in Ostrava that is centralized, and most of the part of the university is in one location. So it's more like a US style of the campuses, and it creates good spot for the pilot projects that can be done with cooperation with the government bodies, with the industrial partners, you know, with the research background of the university. And with that context, the BIM unit at the rectorate level was formed in the beginning of this year as an initiative of former Vice Rector, Associate Professor Kuda. And this is the stakeholder that takes care of the real asset information management system. And actually, currently it have the BIM model of the Faculty of Civil Engineering, like fully 3D model, Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, and University Kindergarten. So we have these three BIM models. And besides of just having the 3D model of the building, you know, the BIM unit wants to update the models as the buildings, you know, grows. So within the life cycle of the building. And we also have the reverse BIM. So we want to do the BIM model for the already existing parts of the campus. And this BIM unit is cooperating with the investment and asset management department. And so it helps to oversee the preparation of BIM project documentation for the new buildings, and also to assure the quality management of the construction, and also the common data environment management. So what is currently more of the hope and the plan is to ensure the seamless communication within the particular, data system, like computer-aided facility management, common data environment, and enterprise management system. So I cannot say that it's working. I shall say that it's in the beginning, and this is basically the sandbox that we can try it and help also to test it with context of the government, authorities. And just to show you current projects that are prepared. So one is the project of the construction of the refresh facility that is related actually to the project itself. Then the building for Center of Energy and Environmental Technology. This is currently under construction. And also Faculty of Economics that is currently under construction. So the BIM unit is collaborating on the preparation or on the actual building of the facilities at the university. And this is just our last slide. So we try to connect the common data environment, the project documentation, the documentation that is relating about the assets, connect that with the computer-aided facility management, because like two colleagues that are working on the BIM unit are basically from the department of the, let's say, municipal planning and facility management, so they're expert in that field. And to connect that with the SAP, the enterprise management system. So this is the future, but we need to take into account that one thing is the technology, and we can prepare the technology, and then we have the people. And still the artificial intelligence cannot replace fully the people. We are just preparing that. And we need to have the big why and a strong will to go through that. So the convincing and letting people know what are the advantages are things that are ahead of us. So thank you for sharing what is going on.
We appreciate that you came from a university background, from academic field. Thank you very much, Petr. I would like to ask a brief question because time is running out. You mentioned BIM unit. I wonder what is the approach, either one, of teaching of BIM at the university, and two, if students are participating in this BIM unit?
Okay, so actually at the Faculty of Civil Engineering we have introduced new study program that is BIM engineering study program, and it is prepared like cross faculties. So we have input also from other faculties, maybe something, for example, about virtual reality, about economics, management, and those things besides of the construction part. And then also we encourage the students to participate on the reverse BIM. So one of the theses that was the topic that was, given this year was for the reverse BIM of one of the facilities of the university. So students are participating.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Now I would like to move to Slido and to questions from our audience. And this looks very good. We have already some names on it, so we can address them directly. We have some likes, so we will go from the most popular to less popular. So if I may ask our speakers if some of you can take the first question.
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much for the question. So this was our scoping survey. In the sense of a scoping survey, it was very broad. So we addressed all different types of stakeholders within the construction ecosystem. There will be 2 more surveys which will be more targeted, especially one on the aspect of cost and benefits. But the first one was very broad, as a scoping survey is supposed to be, and targeted the whole of the construction ecosystem.
Thank you. I believe this answers the question. The second question, it would be for Petr Klán. Petr, if you could answer the question.
Yes, so while we are looking for something else than CCI, those countries that was placed in the question are not all Europe. We need something that is common in whole Europe, that's it's simple, and is actually working, because it's not only about like that we want something special, that we want to have in Czech Republic, that's something else that no one else is using and not prepared, but CCI has its own problems, and it's not about only about the classification, but it's more about the ecosystem around that. We have discussions with our colleagues if we want to use CCI, or we want to have something different, or if the CCI needs to develop to some level that it will be better. So it's not that I'm against CCI, but I think CCI can be better, or Europe can have one simple classification system.
Thank you. Next question from Josef. What is the Czech government doing to make technical norms and standards accessible for free, sponsored in the AEC industry? This question I would perhaps ask also Yuliya to answer, and also Petr, if you have, if you know. Petr Klán, sorry.
Yeah. So right now we are supporting and paying for the norms that AAC in Czech Republic is able to use it for free. This question is more for Ministry of Industry or our colleagues that are responsible for the norms and the ISO standards. The problem is that all norms right now are paid. I think that it's the problem that if you say that you need to comply with something, and then you need to pay for that, that you will know that what you will need to comply is bad concept. But I know that there are a lot of money, a lot of effort put into creating the norms, so there need to be discussion and further development for that. If Europe, if world needs to have something like that. But in Czech Republic, right now, every ministry is paying for the norms in that field of expertise.
Thank you, and just let me add that I think this being changed, that those norms and those standards that are required to be fulfilled by law, for example, those should be for free, yeah, for AEC later to use them.
Yeah, but we are paying for them.
Okay, so it must change. Yuliya, what about international standards?
Yeah, I'll be a bit cautious responding to this question, but according to, so we're not for profit organization, we're not earning money by selling standards directly. That's our members who do, so it's a whole network and a lot of revenue models built around that. But according to our assessment, it's not actually the standard, the cost of a standard when you buy it, not the cost of the document, which is maybe high, but rather the cost of implementation, so the adoption of it. It takes a long time, it may take effort, it may take consultancy effort at times. So with this in mind, what we're trying to do is to build this vision for this future standardization ecosystem, smart ecosystem, in such a way that maybe the value can be redistributed in a new way between all the stakeholders. And that is what is currently under development. We're designing this. We're asking our members, so standardization bodies, to provide their input, because that is a long-term, that is strategic question. So that would be my response.
Many thanks. Ilektra?
Maybe briefly add, there is a movement, so to say, towards free standards. There's a lot of conversations around that, so it's not like off the table.
Thank you. Ilektra, if you would like to answer the next question, contractors might be reluctant to have DBL due to many issues, such as accountability and due to cost of data gathering. How to overcome these barriers?
Yes, this is a very good question, and I think that it's normal to see reluctancy from the professionals, but also from administrations. I believe, and what we have seen in the studies, is that construction professionals generate a lot of data already. They have to take the permits, they have to map the condition in buildings and infrastructures before they intervene or before they start constructing. So here the idea is how we can make this data that is already generated fit for a logbook, and how this can follow the life cycle of the building. Because apart from, you say that it's a problem to generate, indeed, but an even bigger problem is to regenerate data because they are lost in the previous intervention. There is another, do you want me? Okay. There's another question about the survey that Michael mentioned before. You saw the links in the end of his presentation to all the initiatives we're running right now in terms of digital. Of course, we address to the network, to people that are already registered, but if you identify yourself as a stakeholder, that should be consulted. If you have something to say, the doors are always open in the Digital Building Logbook study, in the High-Level Construction Forum, in the project we run with SMEs, and every other initiative that is in the side of the European Commission in greening and skills. The door is never closed. So we really invite you all to participate.
Thank you very much, and I would like to conclude our session with this note because the time is running out and we will be ready for coffee break. Big thanks to our speakers of the first session. And I would like to invite you to our catering there with a beautiful view at the city of Prague for our first coffee break. And we should be back in 10-15 minutes. Thank you very much.